July 1st, 1960, Ghana declared itself a republic, completing a journey that began 13 years earlier in a businessman's office in Second D. Today, historian and lawyer Anokye Frimpong takes us through this remarkable transformation from colonial dependency to full sovereignty. It all began with one man's vision, George Alfred Grant, Pa Grant, and the formation of the United Gold Coast Convention.
Ghana's journey, properly speaking, started from 1947 when the famous businessman called George Alfred Grant, otherwise known as Pa Grant, from the Western Region Axim, founded the United Gold Coast Convention. He threw an invitation to people such as Dr. J.B. Dankwa, Ubichebi Lamte Akwanje, and others. And some of those people were already those he knew because they were members of the Legislative Council, which later metamorphosed into the Legislative Assembly. So he gathered all of them at his office in Puasu Road, Second D, and then they launched the United Gold Coast Convention towards independence.
The original Big Six, Pa Grant, Dr. J.B. Dankwa, Edward Akufo-Addo, Dr. Ebenezer Akweje, Emmanuel Obechebi Lamte, and William Ofori-Atta, but they needed someone to mobilize the masses.
Around November that very year, up to the Christmas, Kwame Nkrumah was invited into the country to become the General Secretary of the United Gold Coast Convention. Now, within a short time, just 2 years into his stay in Ghana, there was a split between Nkrumah and the UGCC, and he founded his Convention People's Party, 12 June 1949.
A huge crowd cheers as Kwame Nkrumah leaves James Fort Prison freed by the governor as an act of grace on the eve of the inauguration of the new constitution. In the recent elections, the communist-inspired Convention People's Party secured 34 out of 38 seats. The party's policy is self-government now.
The political landscape was now divided. The UGCC represented gradual constitutional progress, whilst Nkrumah's CPP demanded immediate self-government.
So between the two parties, an election was held in 1951, and Kwame Nkrumah's Convention People's Party won overwhelmingly. Nkrumah, being the leader of the Convention People's Party, was given the title or position called Leader of Government Businesses. The following year, he was made the Prime Minister, but with very limited powers. Then there was a 1954 election. Nkrumah won again, and then in 1956, the government notified our parliament that the following year we were going to have our freedom.
Citizens of the new state of Ghana gather for the celebration marking their day of freedom from colonialism. What was once the Gold Coast, a British colony, now becomes an independent commonwealth, since Ghana becomes the first Negro colony in Africa to gain its freedom. Premier Kwame Nkrumah chats with Representative Adam Clayton Powell of the U.S. as Ghana's new army passes in review before the American-educated Premier and Deputy Secretary Ralph Bunche of the United Nations.
And so, indeed, on 6 March 1957, we had our independence. Specifically 6 March because 113 years earlier, there was something called the Bond of 1844, signed on the 6th March between the English, led by Commander Hill, and then the coastal chiefs. So 113 years later, we had our independence.
A large proportion of Accra's population of about 150,000 recently gathered near Parliament House. It was a big occasion in the capital of Ghana, and the Governor-General, Lord Listowel, now arrived to take his place. Here's the Prime Minister's wife, Mrs. Nkrumah. The occasion, the unveiling by the Chief Justice of a statue of the Premier. Rare indeed to have your statue put up in your own lifetime. All the same, it's just a year since the colony of the Gold Coast became independent Ghana within the Commonwealth. Though youth can be a bit too independent, of course. The unveiling of the statue to the man so largely responsible for obtaining independence was now followed by anniversary celebrations. The people of Accra were in holiday mood. To them, a celebration must include a spot of dancing.
But independence came with conditions. Ghana was free, yet not fully sovereign.
The reason why Kwame Nkrumah would still be called a prime minister was because the constitution was not drawn up by himself. We were a colonial country, and Britain was leading us to independence. So the first constitution, which was the Kusi Constitution, was drawn up by the British. And then the second constitution, called the Independent Constitution, or otherwise known as Nkrumah Constitution, was still drawn up by the British. And their aim was to graduate us gradually to a level that we could rule ourselves without them.
For the last time, the Governor-General's flag was flying in Accra as Lord Listowel, the last to hold office as Governor-General of Ghana, arrived for the ceremonies. Musical honors and a smart guard were accorded. A new republic must be scrupulously correct. As Lord Listowel entered the Parliament building, the flag was lowered. A matter for regret? Well, Ghana has chosen to remain in the Commonwealth anyway. There was a banquet to mark this great event in the history of the country, with Dr. Nkrumah making a speech. In the course of it, he thanked Lord Listowel for the Queen's message of good wishes. And a toast to the Republic.
So, between 1957 and 1960, we still had a prime minister sharing government or power with the British, that's Queen Elizabeth, represented by her governor general. So Nkrumah would be called prime minister, just as in Britain we have the prime minister. And then Lord Listowel would be called the governor general, just as in Britain the Queen was the ceremonial or head of state. So we had the same thing. And then in 1960, Nkrumah felt that we had reached the highest level of sovereignty and would be able to govern ourselves without them. In the case of an ordinary independent state, you share power with the former colonial power. When your parliament passes a bill, it will have to be sent to the Queen in Britain to sign. Because she's not here, it is the Governor General who would endorse it. He is in a position to veto it.
For all Ghanaians, naturally, it was a case of one celebration after another. They expressed their delight by dancing. Impromptu, al fresco. That's the way. When President Nkrumah, wearing Ghanaian costume for the occasion, drove through the capital, he got a great reception. That was natural enough too, for he, more than any other man, was responsible for the achievement of this moment. The people of Accra seem to be expressing their faith in his continuing leadership and the future of the Republic.
So to avoid all this, it is always proper that you reach a full sovereignty where your laws are not appended to or endorsed by a foreign power. So that's the difference between an ordinarily independent state and then a republican state where you don't share power with anybody.
Why was Nkrumah so determined to break completely with Britain? The historian explains multiple motivations.
The African system, traditional African system, the chief does not share power with anybody. Once you install or enskin someone as your chief, the meaning is that he is the head of that community or paramountcy, or he is the overlord. And so therefore, Nkrumah, being an African, being a Ghanaian, felt that once he had been elected as the leader of the country, he didn't need to share power with anyone. The second reason why he wouldn't want to share power with the British was that Kwame Nkrumah was trained in the US. He attended Achimota College, taught as a teacher, and then in 1935, he left the country to the US, spent about 10 years, yes, in that country, doing his master's degree and then several master's degrees, and then working over there. And America was a former colony of Britain. And when America gained her independence, 1776, thereabout, they did not become a cabinet system where they had a prime minister with the queen as their ceremonial head of state. They threw away the British immediately. So Nkrumah's upbringing, his own study, his psyche in the US was that the United States, made up of about 50 countries that had come together, a full continent coming together to form a country. They fought for their independence and threw away the former colonial master, and their leader became the president. And I believe that the fourth reason why Kwame Nkrumah would want us to be a republic was that Kwame Nkrumah hated Nigeria. And if I say he hated Nigeria, to be a very strong word, let me rather say Nkrumah feared Nigeria and saw Nigeria as a living threat for about 2 or 3 reasons. The first one was that Nigeria was more populous than Ghana. And Nkrumah knew that all the populous countries, countries with huge populations, are those that advance more, like US, like China, like Russia. Those countries with big populations, economically, they go up more, because if you are selling, let's say, a book, if you are selling a book in a small country like Togo, if you get 1 million people to buy, you will be lucky. But in a big country like Nigeria, more than 50 million people will buy. So a bigger country is always good. 2, the size of Nigeria. 3, he learned also that Nigeria was more naturally endowed. They had more natural resources than Ghana. So Nkrumah felt that within a short period of time, Nigeria will become the champion and the dictator of the sub-region, if not the entire continent. He was so scared of that. So what he did was that he wanted always to be ahead of Nigeria.
The final confrontation came in 1960. Once again, it was Nkrumah versus his former mentor.
Accra, where the local inhabitants queue up to record their votes in the first general election in the history of the Gold Coast. Yes, it's polling day, as posters proclaim in banner headlines. High officials rub shoulders with market women and traders as the West Africans conduct their first election in an orderly and dignified manner. Directed to the booths, the politically conscious citizens are given ample instructions as to where and how to vote. After a careful check, results showed an overwhelming victory for the Nationalist Convention People's Party.
And so he constituted parliament into a constituent assembly capable of drawing up a presidential constitution and calling for a presidential or a Republican election. And one man opposed him, Dr. J.B. Dankwa, he lost disastrously. And Nkrumah won overwhelmingly. That meant the people of the country, Ghana, wanted the sovereignty, full sovereignty. And so we became a Republican country.
July 1st, 1960, Ghana became a republic. The dream begun by the Big Six was complete but realized in a way they never intended. What happened after the Republic was declared? How did it affect Ghana's development? Today, Ghana's politics still reflects the original divide between Nkrumah and the Big Six. But how does it affect how we remember Republic Day?
Ghana is made up of two political divides, those who support Nkrumah and those who are against Nkrumah. Yeah, even though the NDC is not an offshoot of the CPP, the NDC as a party subscribes to most of Nkrumah's ideas. Even though it was founded by Jerry John Rawlings, they hardly mention his name, but rather the NDC leaders like Mills and like Mahama would want to prefer using Nkrumah as their mentor. And then people like Akufo-Addo and his group would also want to hate Nkrumah for whatever he stood for.
In recent years, Republic Day has taken on new meaning. President John Dramani Mahama has transformed July 1st from a simple holiday into a day of national prayer and thanksgiving.
One of Ghana's greatest blessings is the harmony with which we practice our diverse faiths. And so, with conviction, reverence, and unity of purpose, I hereby declare the Republic Day, 1st of July of every year, also as Ghana's official National Day of Prayer and Thanksgiving.
And so just as Akufo-Addo's relative, distant relative, J.B. Dankwa, did not want Nkrumah to declare a Republican status, it continues to run and flow in their blood. And no wonder when he became president, he found a way of throwing away the Republican status. Why? When you have the Republic Day, 1st July as a holiday, naturally, young students, the pupils, will ask their teacher, say, why do you say that tomorrow is a holiday, nobody should come to school? The teacher will be forced to narrate the history of Ghana to the person. And that history will give recognition and respect to Kwame Nkrumah. And they don't want to hear that. No wonder that Mahama, who loves Nkrumah, says he's going to bring it back. It will be a day of national thanksgiving. National thanksgiving, I support it. Why I support it is that there are so many people who have done great things for this country, and otherwise we are not acknowledging them. And one example is Kwame Nkrumah.
From political celebration to national thanksgiving, Republic Day continues to evolve. But whether we pray, celebrate, or simply remember, July 1st remains the day Ghana claimed its complete freedom.
All the factors that helps a country to develop are still here. We still have the Kosombo Dam. You understand? Accra International Airport is there, and Accra is there. Tema is there, Takrady is there, and human beings are here. So provided a leader of Ghana would want to be like Kwame Nkrumah, he can do and even beyond. Yes, anybody can decide to do greater things for the country, depending on the dream the person has got. It was Nkrumah's dream, and he was able to achieve up to about, say, 70%. And I urge young people coming up, leaders, to have that idea of understanding that no matter who you are, you will die one day. And then no matter the house you build today, your children will not live in that house. They will not be interested in living there because the world is changing every day. The money you put in your bank account will be useless. But if you leave a name, that is a legacy which cannot be beaten by anyone. And that's why since his overthrow in 1966 and his death in 1972, he was still recognized as Africa's greatest politician. And the rest after him, nobody has been able to achieve that. People can dream and they still can achieve even greater heights.